and welcome to another edition of Talk Leadership with Cedrick. You know, everybody needs a little TLC. Talk Leadership with Cedrick is where we focus on leadership and personal growth with business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas. Our guiding leadership principle is the law of contribution. The law of contribution says growing yourself enables you to grow others. So you can't give what you don't have. So first you must grow yourself to be able to grow others. We believe outstanding leaders like yourself will help us help others. So tonight, I want to introduce you to another dynamic leader. You know, every week, I like to do a proper introduction of my guests. And tonight is no different. Let me introduce our guest. Now, tonight's guest is special because he and I both are retired from Abbott. Now, when I introduce you to Mark is going to say, hey, we work together at Abbott. But and that's because that's what leaders do. But let me say this. Mark is the person that gave me an opportunity to lead my first sales team. Folks, within Abbott, they don't just let anybody and everybody lead a team. Someone has to have confidence in you, and Mark did. So let me introduce you to Mr. Mark Smits. Mark Smith is the son of a soldier. He grew up traveling all over the United States and the world as his dad was stationed in places like Okinawa, Japan. While attending high school in El Paso, he made the decision to attend Texas A&M University on an ROTC scholarship. After A&M, he joined the U.S. Army, where he served in places like Fort Sill, Oklahoma for 4 years. From the Army, Mark moved to civilian life as a sales rep for Abbott Diagnostics. Mark has held a variety of sales, marketing, and service roles during his 25 years at Abbott Laboratories. After retiring from Abbott as the divisional vice president, he held several senior vice president roles at 3 different diagnostic companies, including Fisher Healthcare and Quidel Diagnostics. Mark retired in 2015 and splits his time between Dallas-Fort Worth area and his ranch near College Station. Mark and his wife, Missy, planted a 2-acre vineyard in 2017. So he's not just sitting around watching Judge Judy all day, folks. And when he will begin the winemaking process this summer. Mark and Missy have been married for over 40 years. Talking about consistency, right? That's awesome. And they have 3 sons and a daughter. They have 8 grandchildren and a 9th one due in November. Mark stays busy at the vineyard, but still finds time to travel, play golf, and keep up with old pals. And we will add book writing to his list of things. So help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Mark Smits. Mark, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cedrick. I was sounding like a really smart guy right up until the time that you said that I planted a vineyard.
Well, you know, that's incredible and it's awesome. You know, I know when you initially thought, hey, when you were a young guy that I'm gonna retire at some age. I know you weren't thinking that when I retire, then I'm gonna go into the winemaking business, right?
Couldn't have been further from my mind. I'm blessed in the fact, though, that I have a special wife who is a landscape designer, and she's got a very green thumb. And so she was actually the one that suggested that we should plant grapes. And I, for some reason, thought it was a good idea. And here we are 4 years later, and it's really been a lot of fun, and it's been super educational, and I wouldn't trade a thing.
Awesome. So we already have a lot of guests that are coming on. You remember the name Ron Burke, Jessica Griffin, Tim Screen. They're all popping in here. Janet Sparks. They're all popping in the.
It's like an old Abbott Alumni Association, huh?
Absolutely. We'll have an Abbott reunion here tonight. So, Mark, we're just going to have a casual conversation, and I'm going to go through and ask you a few questions, and let's just have some good fun and dialogue. So, everything rises and falls on leadership. So, tell the listeners, Mark, about your journey to leadership, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great way to start, Cedrick, because as you grow up, I don't think you really spend a lot of time thinking about leadership until you actually become a leader. But I was blessed to have grown up in a family where my dad was an officer in the Army, and my dad was a great guy. He's unfortunately passed away now, but he was a great example for me, and he taught me a lot of things about making sure that if you're going to do something, you're going to do it right. And I think even when I was in high school, I aspired to be like him, and I wanted to go into the military, and I started to study things about how to be an effective leader. So it started there, and then it certainly accelerated when I went to A&M. If you read the book, you'll see that I think that Texas A&M in the Corps Cadets is a 4-year leadership lab, and I really learned a lot there. And from there, I went into the military for 4 years and paid the government back for my education. And it was interesting because my dad actually commissioned me into the military, and after I saluted him as the first officer that I saluted as an officer, he told me to do my 4 years in the military and then get out because I had so much more to offer than just being in the military. And I've had a great career. I've had a very blessed life, and I've enjoyed every part of it. But yeah, my leadership journey started very young. Going back to when I was in middle school or high school, I knew I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps.
That is awesome. So one of our guests here is you might know her. I'm not sure. Lori Smits Martin.
And she's my younger sister.
Yeah, he said hello.
See, awesome. It's a good thing to know that my sister is a fan.
Yeah, that is true. If family's not a fan, then whoo, man,
you're in trouble.
Exactly. So, Mark, besides writing a book, and we're going to get to your book, besides writing a book, what else have you been doing since you've been retired?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit already. I retired from corporate America in 2015, but I knew I still had a lot of gas left in the tank. I knew that I needed to have something to keep me physically and mentally busy. I couldn't see myself sitting back in an easy chair and watching TV all day long. I just couldn't see myself doing that. And like I said, my wife suggested that we start the vineyard. And I'm blessed to live in a state like Texas where there's a really strong agricultural advisory group that's part of the Extension Service out of A&M. And so literally all of 2015 and most of 2016, I studied on how to do a vineyard. And in late 2016, with the help of some really good friends, we put all the infrastructure in for the vineyard. And in 2017, we planted the vineyard. And it keeps me busy. It's a year-round thing. The actual growing season is really only from around March to July, but you stay busy in the vineyard all the time. And in addition to that, my wife Missy and I have been blessed that we've been able to travel to different parts of the world, which I highly encourage anybody who has the means to do that, because you learn a lot about yourself and about your country and how great it is to be an American by going and seeing how other people live. And that's pretty much what keeps me moving, what keeps me busy. That in addition to my family. I'm blessed that I've got great kids, and we all like to spend time with each other, and we share a lot, and all but my oldest son and his family live in the area, so we get to see each other a lot. And even my oldest son and his family, we go out of our way to spend time with them. So, and obviously family is critical, so it's important. And I'm really glad that now that I'm not working all the time, I have time to just go and do those kinds of things where, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the only thing in life, once we get to an advanced age, is we know that job won't be there. We know that the sales numbers won't be there, but family will be there. Right. So it's important to cherish those things.
Right. Yeah. Nobody's going to mention your stack ranking at your eulogy, I don't think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If they do, then that's problems. No families here, but you know what? Mark was ranked the #1 sales rep in 1975.
Heck of a guy.
So, leaders come in all different packages with different strengths, right? And so what strengths do you feel are important to be a successful leader?
Yeah, so this is really a great question, Cedrick, because this really speaks to the diversity of America. I think in my very early days, I had this stereotype in my mind that leaders had to be outgoing and aggressive, and then I've learned over time that leaders come in all shapes and sizes. There are introverts that are tremendous leaders and extroverts that are tremendous leaders. And we actually did an exercise one time where they laid out the pictures of 50 different people. And, even our presidents have all been different personalities, and some of them have been great leaders and some of them haven't been that great at all. I mean, Lincoln was very much an introvert, and he was a tremendous leader. So I think anybody can be a leader, anybody. And I don't, you hear these things about, is leadership taught or are you born with leadership skills? Well, I do think that some people have a little bit more of a DNA makeup, but I absolutely believe that everybody can be a good leader. Everybody can lead. There's nothing to keep people from leading. And I've really evolved in what I think being a good leader is. I think being a good leader, if I had to give you a couple of attributes, I would start with patience. I think a leader has to be patient. I think a leader has to allow for situations and for people to evolve. I think a leader has to be flexible. I think a leader has to change his approach depending on who he's trying to lead. One leadership style doesn't fit all. And I think a leader has to be empathetic. I think you have to allow for people to make mistakes, and you have to pick them up and encourage them and ask them to continue to move forward. So I think again, everybody has the characteristics that would allow them to be a good leader. You just have to put yourself in situations where you can allow that to develop and grow.
Sure, absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with that. And patience and flexibility are not only one of those attributes that a good leader has to have, but great leaders almost always have that skill.
Yep.
And another thing is good leaders ask great questions. What has been some of the best questions that you've asked that has made a big difference in your journey as a leader?
So I don't think that I can give you a list of specific questions that I've asked, but I can tell you that there's one word that I learned how to use frequently that really changed my effectiveness as a leader, and that word is how. I think once a strong leader learns how to use the word how, it just propels him to be even more of a successful leader. And what I mean by that is, how is such a powerful word. How can we get this done? How can I help you to be better at what you're doing? How can I create an environment that causes you to be more successful? How would you like to see us do this? How would this work better for you? How are you thinking that we could do this differently? It's a great word, and it really teaches you a lot of different things by allowing you to tap into all of the attributes and skills that your people can bring to the table. So that's what I would tell you would be the most powerful question that I think you could ask.
I absolutely love it. And it's amazing that you said that. We were at a national sales meeting. It was in Dallas. I think it was probably one of my first or second national sales meeting with Abbott. And both Jeff McCowan and I was in a group with Jeff, Scott Ingalls, and Cindy White. Now, I'm a young, brand new sales guy, and those three are giants in Abbott sales, even at that time. And one of the things they said to me was, just ask how and why. So It's amazing that you said that as well.
Yep.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about this great book that you just wrote, Core Values, a lifetime of leadership lessons learned as a Texas Aggie cadet. So I'm excited to talk with you about this book. But my first question around it is, so what made you decide to write this book?
So Cedrick, I have had this book rattling around in my little brain for over 20 years. And I have started and stopped the writing of this book probably 24 times. And I knew that there was these core values that I learned at A&M that incubated over time. And when I reflect back on what I learned there and whether it helped me to be more successful, I could come up with a list very easily. But what I couldn't figure out is how to put these words in a progression that would allow people to have a little bit of fun reading the book and still learn something from it. And that's what took 20 years. But I'd get together with my buddies and we'd have a great time and laugh about some of our memories. And every time we would talk about the memories, it would trigger these thoughts about, that's a fun thing, but do you guys realize that taught us how to do this? And it took a long time for me to figure out how to put the pieces together, but I've been wanting to do this for a long time, just because I think it's so important. And not everybody can go through a set of experiences like the Corps Cadets, and not everybody has to. But what I was hoping to do was to pass along some tips for my children and for my grandchildren that would allow them to get off the launching pad even faster by just comprehending some of these things that literally took me a lifetime to figure out were helping me.
Awesome. And so you had this book really, festering for a long time, and then you decided, let me just write down some notes, and then you put it together. And so this is just a standoff question here, or a question that I didn't send you, but here, what made you say, hey, now is the time to put this book out? And the reason I'm asking that is because if you think about the times we live in now, you talked about different presidents, you think about going from not having this coronavirus crisis to having this coronavirus crisis, and how businesses have to figure out how to juggle life in this new world. It's like the timing was perfect. So for you, why now this book?
Yeah, so we live in a crazy time. There's no doubt about that, and I know that's, us trying to figure all this out is not the purpose of this call, which
Sure.
probably wouldn't even try to want to do that even if we had the time to do it.
No, sure.
Because I don't think I could do it. But what the quarantine did do for me is it took away a lot of other options for how I would spend my time. So it caused me to focus, and that focus is what caused me to pull all my notes out and take another look at them and reorganize. And then that's not the only reason that I wanted to get it off my bucket list. I mean, we're all getting older. I wanted to share this with my kids and my grandkids, and I definitely wanted to share it with my buddies from A&M. We truly are a band of brothers. We still get together a couple times every year. We always have a great time when we get together. We laugh. We remember all the good times, and I wanted to do it for them too. So I don't think I have anything more profound to say about why I chose this time. It was more a matter of the quarantine, kind of focusing me to spend my time in a useful way other than just watching TV, which you can only watch so much TV.
Absolutely. And one of the guest people watching, Azita said, just leaving a great legacy, right? And so taking those thoughts, putting them down, and you even mentioned it, that I want to leave it this legacy for my grandkids, right? Which is awesome. That's, I mean, right there is enough said about it, why you did it now. So that's awesome.
Okay, so my oldest son is married to a fantastic lady who grew up with parents from New Orleans. And so obviously, A&M is a SEC college. And unfortunately, what's happening is my grandkids in that family are growing up to be LSU Tigers.
Oh, okay.
And so this book is designed to try to point them a different direction and get them back to the great state of Texas and away from LSU, which is really hard.
And there goes the ulterior motive. All right. It's sort of like the story of this farmer. He raised hogs, and he would always overfill the trough. And one of the hogs said to the other one, "Man, why does he always treat us so well?" He's trying to fatten them up and get them ready.
Yeah.
Awesome. So in the book, you wrote 28,440 push-ups. I just want to know, did you really do 28,440 push-ups?
No way. Cedrick, if you and I had to do a push-up contest right now, you would fly by me on your fourth push-up. I have no upper body strength at all. Never have. But at A&M and all my buddies that might be listening now, they all know that we developed this really clever way of keeping our back straight and bobbing our head to make it look like we were doing push-ups. Nobody knew. Well, they all knew that we weren't doing push-ups, but yeah, that's the way it was. I wish that I would have taken it more seriously. I'd probably be a lot more fit right now, but yeah, there's no way I could do that many push-ups. We did have some guys that could knock out, 79 good Marine push-ups, and they were, we would pull them into the room afterwards and say, "Hey, you got to knock that off because you're making the rest of us look bad."
Sort of like you with the shiny shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
So folks, the shiny shoes, we won't talk about it, but you have to get the book to know what the shiny shoes are. Okay.
Yeah, it was good that I didn't try to pull off those shoes. That wouldn't have worked very well.
So in one of the chapters you wrote, it's in Find the Fun chapter. You explain this second language concept, and So, what impact does it have on your, or did it have on your leadership style?
Yeah. So, well, one of the things that the Corps cadets did for us is it not only challenged us physically, but it also challenged us mentally. There were words that we weren't allowed to say. There were words that were off limits for us, and so the upperclassmen were always trying to trick us into acknowledging that we knew something that we weren't supposed to know. And it's this mental game of keeping you on your toes that develops over time. And I think it really makes you stronger to have to constantly pay attention to all of those different conversations to make sure that you're not doing anything that will get you in trouble. But that's not the real reason why I wrote that chapter about Find the Fun. Um, I'm I'm a big believer in optimism. I think leaders have to be optimistic. If you ask me one word that would describe what I think is like the most essential skill that a leader has to have, it's optimism. I mean, I don't think you should have blind optimism. I mean, you have to be realistic, but there's always a way forward. There's always a positive slant. There's always something that you can do. And I think people will rally around leaders that demonstrate that optimism. And part of what I learned about being optimistic is that no matter how dark the sky is, no matter what kind of mess you're in, no matter how bad the circumstances are that are around you, if you just think hard enough, you can find something funny about it. And if you can find something funny about it, then you can typically find a way out of it. And I live by that. I still live by that. No matter how deep the pile is that you might be standing in, there's something funny about it, and that includes looking at yourself and looking at your circumstances. And I was blessed at A&M to be surrounded by 14 other guys that thought the same way I did. I was asked by a friend the other day who has already read the book if I believe that everybody who went through this experience came out of it with the same attitude that I did, and I would tell you I doubt it. I mean, we all process information differently, and I am quite positive that there are lots of people that go through the Corps Cadets experience and thought it was not so much fun, and I would only blame them for that. I mean, because two people can look at exactly the same situation. One person can come out of it with optimism and think that there's a silver lining, and then other people will look at it and say the world's going to end in 5 minutes. I don't know what it is, but it's a choice you can make. Choose to be optimistic. And I see somebody on the screen is saying optimism is needed today. And Robin, you couldn't be more right. We got to quit looking at the negative and start trying to figure out the positive. And I think if we were able to do that, I think a lot of positive things would come from that.
Sure, absolutely. So, one of the things, Mark, I thought about when you were talking about this was, I didn't think about the what made you decide to go to A&M and join the Corps.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a fun story behind this because I was going through the process to get admitted to the military academy at West Point. My dad had this dream that he wanted at least one of his 3 sons to go to West Point, and man, I was so caught up in the military, and I wanted to do it, and I actually was awarded a commission to go to West Point. Now, at the same time, I was dating a girl in high school whose dad was an Aggie, and I'd go see her, and I'd spend time talking to him, and he actually gave me a couple books to read about A&M, and he just filled my head with how great a school A&M is. So I had that hard conversation with my dad where I said, "So, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to go to West Point. I think I'd rather go to A&M. And God bless my dad. He was on board from day one. I could tell that he was disappointed and probably a little skeptical. Why are you going to a cow college when you could have gone to the military academy? But he gave me the blessing, and we converted my commission to West Point to a 4-year scholarship, and I was off and running. And I look back at it, and it's because of Mr. Berry and what he would tell me about A&M that turned my head on that.
Awesome. Well, so when we're talking about the Find the Fun chapter, we kind of talked about this before the show as well, but I have to say this. I remember we talk about finding the fun, in the life of a sales rep, especially in a highly competitive environment like at Abbott Laboratories and an organization that has such high standards for each sales professional, right? Talking about finding the fun. I remember at national sales meeting, you guys always finding the fun. There's one time where you guys were in a hotel lobby playing quarters, and I'm probably, I don't know, it's probably my second or third national sales meeting, and I'm still with, my eyes wide open, trying to figure out who's who. And Bill Minix was my DM at the time, and he'd say, now you guys need to make sure when the doors close at 8 o'clock, you're in the room. When this happens, you're there. When this happens, you're there. But every night you guys were finding the fun. I was too scared to find the fun.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about leadership, and I also sincerely believe that leaders have to be human. I think we're all people, and if your group can see that you're willing to roll up your sleeve and do some things that they would do, and see you being kind of a knucklehead from time to time, that helps morale. I had a boss I worked for one time who said that the working end of a shovel doesn't know whether you're a leader or not. Everybody can operate that shovel with the same skill level, and I've always believed that you've got to lead by example, and that includes finding the fun. So yeah, I did make sure that we look for things that people would enjoy to do, and were memorable. So that's another thing, Cedrick, that is amazing. So you spend 4 years at A&M, and for sure there were some things that we did while we were there that weren't a lot of fun, and that we didn't enjoy while we were going through it. But here it is, 40 years later, and we all get together, and not one of us can remember any of those times.
Sure.
But we can all remember the fun things that we did. And I always thought that when I was in leadership positions at Abbott and at the other places, make things entertaining, because then people will remember what you just did. I mean, if you go to a national sales meeting and you just move from room to room to room and go through a quiz at the end of every session, at the end of it, you're not gonna remember anything. But if during some of those there's some skits and some active things and some fun things, then you stand a much better chance that people will remember what you're trying to tell them.
Sure, absolutely. I agree with that. So growth is intentional. In your career, what did you do for professional and personal growth?
Yeah. So another piece of advice that I would give to everybody is, it's real simple. This is real simple. Your entire life, you just need to stay curious. Curiosity is such a valuable attribute. It's so important to stay curious. And when you approach things with curiosity, that means you're going to try to understand why things work. You're going to try to understand things. You're going to be more apt to read about things. You're going to be more apt to go to classes. You're you're going to be more apt to bring people in that can help you to learn something that you didn't know. So I would tell you that my professional and personal growth has just been a byproduct of the fact that I've always been curious. I want to try to understand how things work and why they work. And I want to understand the things that I don't understand. And I feel sorry for people who aren't curious because it seems like that would lead to a very dull life. And so I read a lot. This whole vineyard exercise is an output of my curiosity. And it's super rewarding. I mean, when you see these vines go from just being, matchsticks and pieces of wood to producing clusters of grapes, it's an amazing and rewarding thing. And I think you have to be curious and you have to try to learn, no matter how old you are. Old dogs can learn new tricks, believe it or not.
All right, I'll have to remind people that, hey, that's not true, that old dogs can't learn new things. That so I love the pull principle, and isn't this something that leaders should be thinking about every day? And how can that be taught or transferred into corporate America?
Yeah, so I wrote a chapter in the book about pull is better than push. And I totally believe this. And growing up in a life of sales, I was always amazed when I would work for people who felt like they had to write a lot of different rules and regulations to try to put a fence around our behavior. Because smart salespeople, no matter how tight that fence is that you try to corral them with, it'll only take them a matter of days before they figure out how to break out of the corral. And so what are you trying to do? You're trying to limit somebody by putting all these rules and regulations in. And I think that's a terrible way to lead. The best way to lead is to say, this is what we want to do. This is why it's valuable for us to do it. And this is where we want to be, and inspire them to get there and teach them the things that they need to know so that they can get there. And A&M, it took me several years after I left the school before I realized that. But if you look at the cover of my book, it's a picture of me and my buddies, and that's our senior uniform at A&M. And it's with these knee-high riding boots, but only seniors are allowed to wear those boots. Now, when you're a freshman, it's your privilege to take those boots off of the seniors, because those boots don't come off unless somebody pulls them off. And I'm sure there's lots of people that think, well, man, how demeaning can it be for you to have to remove somebody's shoes? But you're missing the point. The point is that as a freshman, you get to hold these boots, and it makes the dream real. Hey, someday I could be wearing some of these boots if I just follow the process and go through the journey. And I'm telling you, there were lots of down times where we would start laughing and say, hey, this is all because this is also that we can wear boots our senior year. And it stuck with me. It stuck with me. If you want somebody to do something, don't build I'm sorry, but our government kind of is doing a little bit of this now too. I mean, we got all these regulations and rules, and people are finding ways to avoid them. Instead, we need to paint a picture of what we want, and then we need to figure out what people need in order to get there, and teach them how to get there and inspire them to get there. And I just think it's a lot better approach to try to pull somebody into what you want them to do instead of trying to push them into what you want them to do.
Sure. There's a leadership concept that says people do what people see, right? If you want people to do a certain thing, you have to model it. And that's kind of really what you're saying. You have to model it and not necessarily try to regulate everything.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can't write enough rules to control human behavior. You just can't. I mean, let's look at it. I mean, there's been people that have been trying to do this in our own country for hundreds of years, and there's still not enough rules. So you just can't. I mean, it's impossible. So why not try to inspire somebody to be where you want them to be instead? I think it's a much better approach.
Absolutely. And our audience is agreeing with that. Tracy and Dr. Tracy Lashley says, yes, so true. So, you know, in the book you wrote, you learned later in your career that it was important to build a network. And we hear that a lot, but why is it important? This is a two-part type question. Why is it important to build a network? And what would you say to the person who is, they're in the grind every day, but they're not taking advantage of their network or networking opportunities?
Yeah, so let me start by just briefly mentioning the lesson from A&M. At A&M, when you're a freshman, you're obligated to meet all the upperclassmen, and that's 2,000 cadets. And there's a formal process that you use to introduce yourself, and part of it is trying to teach you to memorize things, and part of it was to try to help you to build a network. And you know, there's some harassment that goes with it. If you don't remember somebody and you have to reintroduce yourself, sometimes there's a little bit of punishment that goes with it, and people take it seriously. Well, I was horrible at it. I mean, I was horrible at it, and thank God my fish buddies and we had a system that we developed that would help all the people like me that couldn't remember names. But then I started thinking about it after I got out of school. Can you imagine how powerful it would be if I would have taken the time to know all 2,000 of those people every year? I mean, can you imagine the power of when I have a question about anything, just call so-and-so because he's a scientist and he knows the answer to that, or call so-and-so because he's a banker and he knows the answer to that, or call so-and-so because he's in charge of that company and they can provide that. It takes a village to be successful, and there's everybody that you come in contact with can add value to your life. Everybody. You don't know everything. In fact, you know very little, and you can always take the time to try to learn it yourself. But when you're surrounded by this huge network, then all of a sudden you have all these levers that can help you get there faster, that can compress your learning curve. And I can't imagine where I would be if it wasn't for a huge network of people to help me get where I ended up. And you know, again, my vineyard is a good example of that. Texas A&M has an agricultural extension service. They have 4 vineyard specialists. They've divided the state into 4 segments. And so I have a lady that it's her job to help us learn how to raise grapes, and she's there for me anytime I need her. I'll send her pictures from the vineyard on text, and she'll give me the answer. I mean, just like that. That's the power of a network. That's the power of having people that know stuff that you don't know, and that's also admitting to yourself that you don't know everything.
Sure.
And that there's other people out there that can help you because they know more about it than you do.
Sure, absolutely. So, folks, we are having a conversation with Mr. Mark Smits, the author of Core Values, a lifetime of leadership lessons learned as a Texas Aggie cadet. If you don't have this book, folks, I'm telling you, you want to get it. I read the book from cover to cover, and let me tell you what I told Mark before we started the show. This was a fun leadership book to read. Not only does he talk about leadership principles, but he's also giving you funny stories to help you relate to the principles that he's talking about. So if you're looking for a new leadership book, life lessons book, you need to get Core Values. It's a great book, and we'll talk about where they can get it from and all that type stuff in just a little bit here. But so, Mark, when you talked about the lady at A&M that helps you with the give you advice on growing your grapes, you're really talking about a mentor, right?
Yes. Well, so you and I have talked about mentors in the past, and I would tell you this: I can't necessarily put my finger on any one person and say that's my mentor. But I can tell you, I have a list as long as my arm of people that have been mentors for me as I've gone through life. And I've learned from everybody that I've come in contact. Everybody can be a mentor. Um, I've learned a lot from a lot of different people about a lot of different things. I still stay in touch with a good buddy of mine from Abbott, Skip Baldino. I learned a lot about business from Skip. He's got a fantastic business mind. He's very organized. And there were things that he taught me that I'm not inclined to do. And he showed me the value of that. I've got another really good friend who unfortunately has passed away now, but John taught my entire circle of friends, but certainly me, what it means to be a friend and what friendship is, and how to be a better friend. And so what I would tell you, Cedric, is you can learn from everybody that you come in contact with if you approach it with that curious mind and say, there's value in every relationship and value in everybody that you come in contact with.
Awesome. So really what you're saying to that junior leader that's out there, or that new leader that's out there, that new employee that's out there, what do you tell them about? I know you say that you can learn from anyone, but how do they approach that, a senior executive, or how do they approach someone that's higher ranking in them in the organization to say, hey, I would like to have you as a mentor or someone that I can turn to for advice from time to time? How do they approach that?
Yeah, so I think being curious is important, but being courageous is also important. And unfortunately, in the business world, I think barriers are created where supervisors and especially senior executives are made out to be these mythic creatures that are unapproachable, and that's sad because anytime anybody came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to spend a little bit of time trying to understand why you think the way you did," I would always take time to do that. And I tell my sons this: "Hey, you're not always going to have the tremendous leaders that you're going to be working for. Not everybody is going to be the model leader, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn from everybody that you work for. Some people are going to show you things that you'll never want to do again. And other people are going to show you things that you're going to want to do every time you think about leadership. The fact is that you can learn from everybody." So these young people, I would tell them two things. First of all, I would say, don't be afraid to approach people that you think you can learn something from and ask them if they can help you. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say, and I talk about this in the book, is be an influencer yourself. Leadership is not necessarily something that's given to you by position. Leadership is something that you can influence at every level. There are peer leaders in every group, and having a conversation with a supervisor to say, "Hey, I've got this idea, and I'd like to try to influence the group to do this," and getting their help to do that is a great way for brand new employees to develop better leadership skills.
Awesome. So I was just typing in some of your notes in the comments for people. So you had a great, successful career at Abbott. There's always ups and downs and twists and turns and things that you can't really do anything about, but that doesn't stop you. But you had a lot of successes. Tell us about a time where you had a misstep or failure, and how you overcame that, And what are the leadership lessons learned in those moments?
Yeah, so probably the biggest mistake I made while I was working at Abbott was my first trip through the service organization. I actually had 2 tours of duty with the service organization. The first one only lasted about a year, and then the second one was 3 or 4 years. And so I was put in charge of the service organization for 1 year. And while I was in that position, I was getting all kinds of advice from my senior leaders about how they wanted the service organization to be more like a sales organization. And so that's why they put me in that role. And so that's what that's what I was told to do, and that's what I tried to do. And it was a disaster. It was a disaster. There's a reason why salespeople go into sales, and there's a reason why service people go into service. Our brains are wired differently. You can't make an average service person approach his job like a salesperson. It wouldn't work. I mean, sales. It just wouldn't work. But there I was trying to squeeze that square peg into the round hole, and it took me about 3 or 4 months with the service managers that were working for me, doing their very best to help me along. But I finally figured it out, and it got way better after that. I started to realize that I needed to start asking those how questions. How can we do this better? And then so my second tour of duty in the service organization, I approached the job with a fresh start and a way better process, and and we made the second tour. We accomplished great things, and it was because I was listening a lot more, and I still had some scar tissue from the first time, and I learned from that. So yeah, you're not always going to win. Like we were talking about earlier, Cedrick, sometimes you're going to run out of time. And that means that you're going to have to pack up your stuff and figure out what you did well, and figure out what you need to do differently. And then when the game starts again, you attack it differently. And a good leader realizes that they have to be flexible enough to learn from their mistakes and do things differently. And that comes from talking to your people and asking those how questions.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And learning from those. I love how you said that your first time, here's the way you did it. You learn from that. Your second time was much different, and your approach was much different. So that means that you didn't just go through an experience and not have that reflection time and make a change for that next time around, right? And sometimes we do that. We forget about that reflection time to learn and then make a correction.
Well, yeah. So we all work in organizations that have a chain of command, right? The general tells the colonel that this is what he wants, and the colonel tells the major this is what he wants, and we used to have a saying in the Army that S rolls downhill, right? And so everybody just says, yes, sir, I'll go do that. And Abbott has a little bit of that, and it takes a lot of courage for that person that's the 4th or 5th link in that chain to say, whoa, hold on a second, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not close enough to it. And let me explain the way it really is. And good leaders have that kind of courage to have those kind of conversations, even though they're not easy to have. And I think my first swim through the service organization, I didn't have enough courage when I should have had more courage. And the second time, I said to myself, I'm not going to let that happen again, because there were all these fantastic people working in the service organization that didn't have a voice, and they weren't understood, and they needed somebody to advocate for them, and then I finally figured that out.
Well, awesome. That's awesome. Well, here's a piece of advice that you gave me, Mark. I don't know if you remember this, but when I was here in Houston as a rep, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to go into global marketing or not, and I called you and asked you to give me some feedback and your opinion. And one of the things that you said, and it stuck with me till this day, and I tell my kids this all the time, and when I'm talking to new entrepreneurs, I tell them as well. And you said, look, if you decide that you want to go into global marketing because the learning experiences are for whatever reason, then what you need to do is run to it with unbridled passion. And those two words stuck with me, that you told me that. And so thank you for that, because it definitely changed the trajectory of my career. It changed what I was doing, how I was thinking. And but unbridled passion was the key words that you used with that. And I still use it today.
Yeah. So that was another thing that I actually didn't write about it in the book, but here's something that a lesson that I learned at A&M, and the analogy is, if you are trying to go swimming in a swimming pool, there's really two ways to get into the water. You can put your toe in the water, and then your ankle, and then your calf, and then your thigh, and it may take you, if the water's fairly chilly, it may take you 5 minutes to get into the water, and it's miserable the whole time. or you can just jump in the water and your body adjusts in 5 seconds, and then you're in and you're going. And the Corps Cadets at A&M is definitely one of those places where if you're going to just put your toe in the water, you're probably not going to make it. You got to jump into the water all at one time and just start swimming. And I'm a big believer that in everything that you do. Throw caution aside. If it's something that you're interested in, just jump in head first and start swimming, and good things will start happening.
Awesome. I love the whole just jump in and go. I love that. So, hey, what's next for you, Mark? I know you this summer. I know what's next is going to be making wine, but beyond that, what's next?
Yeah. So as far as an activity goes, I'm definitely committed to my winemaking efforts. I'm going to make a white, a rosé, and a red wine. This will be my first year of doing it. Like you and I were talking about earlier, this is going to be a tricky thing for me, because I understand the mechanical steps, but I'm not a chemist, and there's a lot of chemistry involved. So I'm going to have to learn a lot about chemistry in order to do this right. And it's one of those things where if you make some mistakes, you can recover from them, but typically it's one of those things where too many mistakes and you have to wait a year before you can start all over again. So I got my head down, and I'm pumping as hard as I can to try to figure that out. But more importantly, what I've really tried to do since retirement in 2015 is I'm just trying to be a better human being. And shame on me for waiting until I got off the treadmill to really spend time thinking about that and doing that. But I want to be a better father. I want to be a better grandfather. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better friend. And I just encourage everybody to take time to step off of the treadmill from time to time, and just take a deep breath and think about that thing. It's like you and I talked about earlier in this conversation. The work people aren't going to be there when your eulogy is being said. It's going to be all these friends and family. So do the best you can to be the best you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, hey, your good friend and my good friend Tim Screen says, valuable insights of your journey to become an effective leader. I was fortunate to benefit from Mark's leadership in career success. Thank you, Mark and Cedrick.
Yeah, Tim is a great guy. Our nickname for Tim in our friend group is the Senator, because I've never seen anybody work a room like he can.
Well, that's probably true. Screener, I love him to death. He's an awesome guy. I've learned a lot from him over the years, being on his team and then being a peer with him has been awesome. Um, so, where can our listeners find the book?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. So all you have to do is search for Core Values. You have to put my name down, Core Values, Mark Smits, because there's a Marine that also wrote a book called Core Values that's going to show up also if you just type in Core Values. So it's on Amazon. There's a Kindle version if you're a Kindle guy or gal. And then you can also find it on Barnes and Noble's website. So it's available anywhere that you can buy books, and I would really appreciate it. And thank you very much if you're interested in the book. And I've gotten some positive feedback from it, and I've enjoyed this whole process. And Cedrick, let me just say thanks for you setting this up. It's been just a huge pleasure. And it's just been super great getting to talk about the book and talking about leadership. I'm passionate about it. I hope I've inspired people to be a little bit better at it, and I really appreciate you giving me the platform to do that.
Absolutely, Mark. Like I told you before, and I know you don't like me to say that, but I'll say it because it's true. You had the confidence and belief in me and offered me my first opportunity to lead an organization like Abbott, and it's a tremendous opportunity. It's also a tremendous burden to lead the sales organization, and it's just because it comes with a whole lot of high expectations. So I totally appreciate that. We'll forever be grateful for that opportunity.
Well, I tell you what, Cedrick, I think you and I share a little bit of DNA here, because what you're doing in your after Abbott life is spectacular, and I just applaud you for the time and effort and the example that you're setting, because it's we need more people like you out there doing the kinds of things that you're doing, because you're helping us all get better at it, and I just applaud you for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again for joining us.
Hey, Cedrick, can I see that Ray is putting something up on there. Let me just address that real quick. This book is published on demand, so Amazon is showing it currently unavailable. But if you order it, they'll print it and you'll get it in a week or so. So don't let that little red message from Amazon throw you off the trail. You can order it and it'll come your way.
Awesome. That's exactly why I put it up there, because I was going to ask you. So great minds think alike. Or I was going to go to that. I had another question for you. So one of the things I like in your final chapter, and we won't give that away, but I love the way your final chapter, the way you designed and formatted and structured that final chapter. You don't see that in books a lot. So if you want to know how the final chapter was structured, then you need to buy the book. I'm telling you, you're going to like it. It's just great the book is fun to read, first of all. Good leadership principles and lessons in the book. And then you get to the final chapter and you have this structure and format that's different than most leadership books you're going to get. So thank you for putting that together like that.
Well, Cedrick, you're a heck of a sales guy. When I finally have some wine that's drinkable, I think I'm going to call you, because I'm going to put you to work marketing my wine for me.
Well, that's all those avid years of sales training. So those national sales meetings.
Yeah, and by the way, there'll be something in it for you. I don't know if you're a big wine person, but let me make sure that it doesn't taste like vinegar. And then as soon as I have that done, I'll send some your way.
Awesome. We would definitely love to try it and give it a shot. Actually, Ron Burke actually mentioned that. There was a question that he had. He said, "Hey, tell us where they can get your wine so that they could sip wine and read the book."
Yeah. So unfortunately, my wine is still a year away. The name of the brand is currently I'm going through the trademark process. We want to call it Desperado with a C, not Desperado, Desperado. And it'll be available this time next year. And I'll have a website, and I'll put it on Facebook and some of the other social media locations. But you'll have to, like all good things, you have to wait. So with wine especially, it'll be this time next year when we finally have some wine that we can send out to people.
Well, that will be awesome. We'll have to have you come on here and talk about it. Well, again, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you, Mark, again, for coming on the show. Now, you know, everybody needs a little TLC. So thank you for joining Talk Leadership with Cedrick tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Now, before you leave, if you enjoyed this session with Mark Smits, just type yes in the comments. I want to make sure that we send Mark away with some love. Type yes in the comments. You know, we recently launched a new service called 1550 Marketing, where you can purchase up to 60-minute time slot where we market your business for you. And we market it to a new audience. We expand your current market. We're going to dedicate time to your business. If you're not thinking, if you are thinking, why would I do this? Because if you're not marketing to a new audience, you're destined to go out of business. The principles I learned when I had responsibility for a $1 billion product. Yes, that's billion with a B, folks. When I had that product, we use the same strategies and principles because they apply to your business as well. So reach out to us. So tune in next Monday night. We'll have Ms. Desiree Bellard. She is the owner of the Faith Collection, LLC. And then next Tuesday night, we'll actually have two shows. At 6:30, we'll have U.S. Senate candidate from Louisiana, Mr. D'Artagnan Williams. And then at 7:45, for my Louisiana folks, my Lake Charles folks, we'll have attorney Marshall Simeon on. And he will be talking about the enterprise extension projects. And you want to be here for that session if you're in Lake Charles. Always remember, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. Don't be on the menu. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. And hopefully you'll have a great rest of your week.